June 10, 1934, Rome, Italy. Inside the Stadio Nazionale del PNF, 60,000 people roared with a single voice. On the pitch, Italy and Czechoslovakia were locked in a bruising final that 90 minutes had failed to settle. Extra time loomed. Nerves were shredded. And watching from his private box, arms folded, jaw set, was the man who had made clear that losing was simply not an option, Benito Mussolini. This was not merely a football match. It was a statement of national identity engineered by a dictator who understood the power of sport as propaganda. Italy had to win. The players knew it, the coaches knew it, and so, many would later argue, did the referees. What happened that afternoon would crown a world champion, ignite a continent of controversy, and cast a shadow over football's second-ever global tournament that has never entirely lifted. This is the story of the FIFA World Cup 1934, and 4 years had passed since Uruguay's triumph in Montevideo. The world had darkened in that time. The Great Depression had tightened its grip. In Germany, Hitler had just come to power. In Italy, Mussolini had ruled since 1922, reshaping the country in his authoritarian image. And he wanted the World Cup as his showcase. FIFA awarded the 1934 tournament to Italy, and Mussolini immediately understood what it meant. Stadiums were modernized. Propaganda posters went up across the country. Every detail was controlled and calculated to impress. The message was clear. Fascist Italy was strong, organized, and open for the world's admiration. The defending champions, Uruguay, refused to come. Still bitter over Europe's reluctance to attend 1930, they became the only defending champions in World Cup history to boycott the following edition. Their absence was a pointed snub that hung over the tournament before a ball was kicked. 16 teams qualified, an expansion from 1930's 13. With a qualification process used for the first time, Europe dominated the field. Egypt became the first African nation to compete in a World Cup. Argentina sent a weakened squad. Brazil arrived and departed quickly. The stage was set for a tournament that would be remembered as much for its politics as its football. Italy's coach, Vittorio Pozzo, was one of the most tactically advanced minds of his era. His system, fluid, physically powerful, technically sharp, was built around one supreme talent, Giuseppe Meazza of Inter Milan, a forward of extraordinary elegance whose performances would define Italy's campaign. The tournament, the 1934 World Cup, abandoned the group stage entirely. This was pure knockout football from round one. 16 teams. Single elimination. One loss and you were on the next train home. No second chances. No safety net. Matches were spread across 8 Italian cities: Rome, Milan, Turin, Genoa, Florence, Bologna, Trieste, and Naples, ensuring the political spectacle reached every corner of the country. It was deliberate. Mussolini wanted Italy to feel the tournament in its bones. The first round opened on May 27th with 8 simultaneous matches. Italy announced themselves with a crushing 7-1 demolition of the United States in Rome. Angelo Schiavio scored a hat trick. The Americans, who had reached the semifinals 4 years earlier, were overwhelmed and sent home inside 90 minutes. Germany swept past Belgium 5-2, with Edmund Koenen scoring 3. Austria, the Wunder team, considered Europe's finest, squeezed past France 3-2 after extra time, with the ghostly Matthias Sindelar pulling the strings. Czechoslovakia beat Romania 2-1. Spain overcame Brazil 3-1. Hungary defeated Egypt 4-2. A historic result simply for Egypt's presence. The first African nation on a World Cup stage. Switzerland edged the Netherlands 3-2 after extra time. And Sweden knocked out Argentina 3-2, eliminating the 1930 finalists at the first hurdle. The quarterfinals raised the stakes sharply. Germany beat Sweden 2-1. Austria survived a genuine scare against Hungary, winning 2-1 in Bologna with Sindelar again the decisive figure, though the Wunder team were visibly fraying under tournament pressure. Czechoslovakia continued their quiet, efficient progress, beating Switzerland 3-2 after extra time through the composed finishing of Olgic Nejedly. Then came Italy versus Spain, the tournament's first great scandal. The match was ferociously physical. After brutal 90 minutes, the score was 1-1. A replay was ordered for the following day. 7 Spanish players were too injured to feature. Italy, with home advantage and Mussolini's shadow over the officiating, won 1-0. Spain's players were furious. Their sense of injustice echoed across Europe for years. But in 1934, there was no appeals process. Italy were through. The semifinals, Italy versus Austria, was billed as the true final before the final. The hosts against Europe's Wunder team. Heavy rain had softened the Milan pitch, and the sodden surface disrupted Austria's fluid, technical game entirely. Italy, physically powerful and tactically astute, were better suited to the conditions. Enrique Guaita's single goal settled it. Sindelar, who would become one of football's most tragic figures, dying in mysterious circumstances in Vienna in 1939, under Nazi occupation, played his last match on a World Cup stage. The Wunder team was gone. Czechoslovakia versus Germany in Rome told a different story. The Czechs produced their finest performance of the tournament, dismantling Germany 3-1 with controlled, incisive football. Italy scored twice, cementing his place as the tournament's outstanding forward. The final was set. Italy versus Czechoslovakia. The final Rome. June 10th, 1934. The Stadio Nazionale del PNF filled to capacity, with Mussolini watching from his box, and the Italian players carrying the full weight of what was expected of them. Czechoslovakia arrived as neutrals' favorites. They had been the more convincing side throughout, disciplined, elegant, and unburdened by the political pressure suffocating their opponents. Their goalkeeper, František Planica, was widely considered the world's finest. Nejedly was the tournament's top scorer. Their defensive organization made them extraordinarily difficult to break down. The match was tense and physical. Italy pressed, but Planica kept them out. And then, with 20 minutes remaining, Antonín Puig gave Czechoslovakia the lead. For one extraordinary moment, it seemed possible. The quiet achievers from Central Europe lifting the World Cup in Mussolini's Rome. Italy had Raimundo Orsi, Argentine-born winger, one of several. South American players naturalized as Italian citizens before the tournament. Controversial practice known as oriundi curled a remarkable equalizer that swerved so unpredictably in the air that Orsi himself asked to reproduce it the following day for photographers. Tried 20 times and failed every single one, extra time. Angelo Schiavio, exhausted and injured, found one last surge, call it courage, desperation, or simply the refusal to lose, and drove home the winner 5 minutes into the additional period. Italy 2, Czechoslovakia when Mussolini descended to the pitch. The trophy was presented. The Italian players were photographed with the dictator and paraded as symbols of fascist strength. Vittorio Pozzo wept. Czechoslovakia went home with the quiet dignity of a side that knew in their hearts they had deserved more. Star players and awards: Oldřich Nejedlý, Czechoslovakia, Golden Boot, 5 goals. Tournament's finest individual performer. Technically brilliant, composed under pressure, decisive in the biggest moments. Had Czechoslovakia won the final, he would be remembered as one of football's immortals. As it stands, he is one of its great might-have-beens. František Planica, Czechoslovakia. Arguably the world's best goalkeeper in 1934. Commanding, brave, technically advanced for his era. He kept Czechoslovakia alive through match after match. The goal that beat him in the final was extraordinary. Such are the margins of a World Cup to Giuseppe Meazza, Italy, the heartbeat of the champions. Elegant, intelligent, and capable of moments of sudden brilliance, Meazza was the player around whom Pozzo's entire system revolved. He would go on to captain Italy to the 1938 World Cup as well. A player of genuine all-time stature, Vittorio Pozzo, the only coach in history to win the World Cup twice. His tactical sophistication, man management, and sheer force of will shaped Italian football for a generation. Whatever the controversies around Italy's campaign, his achievement stands alone. Matthias Sindelar, Austria's paperman. He didn't win the World Cup, didn't reach the final. Those who watched him at the 1934 tournament spoke of him with a reverence usually reserved for mythology. The greatest player Austria ever produced, and one of football's most haunting stories. Most iconic moments: Uruguay's boycott, reigning champions refusing to defend their title, sending the loudest possible message about European football's attitude toward South America, a fracture that took years to heal. Italy versus Spain, played twice, 7 Spanish injuries, a next-day replay, and refereeing decisions still debated 90 years later. The tournament's defining controversy: Orsi's final equalizer, a goal so technically freakish that its creator could not reproduce it even once, changed the tournament. It changed history. Egypt's debut, the first African nation at a World Cup, scoring twice against Hungary and Naples, a small, quiet landmark that pointed toward a future the game was not yet ready to imagine. Mussolini's presence, the tournament's darkest thread. Football used as propaganda, as proof of a regime's power, as spectacle in service of ideology. The sport allowed itself to be instrumentalized, and the memory of that has never fully faded. Legacy. The 1934 World Cup is one of football's most complicated inheritances. In pure sporting terms, it delivered a brutal knockout format, 17 matches, 70 goals, and a final that went to extra time. Dramatic, compact, alive. But it was also a tournament conducted under a dictatorship, scarred by refereeing controversies, and stripped of its defending champion before it began. The sport allowed itself to become a political instrument, and the consequences of that, in terms of trust, integrity, and the relationship between football and power, reverberated for generations. Italy's victory launched a dynasty. 4 years later, under Pozzo, they won again in France, back-to-back world champions, a feat no nation has matched since. Czechoslovakia's near miss became a wound the country carried for decades. They would reach another final in 1962 and lose again to Brazil. Their 1934 side deserves to be remembered not as runners-up, but as one of the tournament's great unlucky teams. The world watched more closely in 1934 than it had in 1930. Radio coverage spread further. Newspapers devoted more space. The idea of the World Cup as a global event was solidifying into something permanent and unstoppable. Some tournaments are remembered for the football, some for the politics. The 1934 World Cup demands to be remembered for both, and for the uncomfortable question it poses to anyone who loves the game. What happens when football and power collide? In Rome in 1934, the answer was complicated, contested, and unforgettable. If you enjoyed this journey through football history, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary. The story of the World Cup is only getting bigger, and 1938 is waiting.